and welcome to Rainbow History Class, the queer and trans history that you don't learn in school. My name is Rudy Jean Rigg.
And my name is Hannah McElhinney, and it's really great to be back. But before we get into part 2 of Do You Speak Gay?
Ooh, yes.
Which I'm thinking of now referring to as Parlez-vous Gay. I really would love it if you would take a moment to, one, leave us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Obviously, make that rating a 5. Otherwise, keep it to yourself. As well as actually hitting follow or subscribe, whatever the equivalent is on the place that you're listening to this podcast, because it makes such a difference. And since we've been asking people to do that, we've been noticing that the podcast gets fed out to more people. And so we're getting more people on board, which is so great for us, and also the collective learning about our history, which we strive to do. So it would really mean a lot if you would just hit follow or subscribe.
Yeah, and if you want to join our community, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok. But we also have a Discord, which is a really fun space to be in, and it's a good place to meet new people and make friends. But if you are looking for more exclusive content from us that comes at a very extremely low price, head over to Patreon. We do have a paid tier, which you can obviously enjoy, but join the free tier because we often give out free posts of exclusive content. So that includes early access to episodes, as well as 2 episodes of Detention per month, which is kind of where we go off the rails a little bit. But we also have posts throughout the month as well. So please go over there and check that out. But aside from that, Hannah, I have waited long enough for this part 2 of How to Speak Gay. So please teach me.
Well, we are back, and I do need to do a little language warning on this one because we will be using some words that are frowned upon by polite society, and we need to for linguistic reasons. So if you are listening to this at the moment with your children or parents or teachers in earshot, maybe this is one to pop your headphones in for, or you might not care, but don't say we didn't warn you.
Is it a slur or?
It's not a slur.
Okay.
It's not a slur, but it is one of my favorite words, and one that a lot of people don't like.
I was going to say,
particularly Canadians.
If you're talking about the F word, I'm pretty sure I accidentally let that flag fly a lot. So
I'm not Rudy Jean Rigg.
Okay,
I'm
good.
talking about the word cunt.
Whoa, okay.
And we're into the episode.
All right. I got to mark this episode explicit.
There we go. So we kicked off this Parlez-vous Gay, Do You Speak Gay 2-part series because I was looking through social media and I was just looking at just how many people were commenting the phrase mother is mothering on clips uploaded by Chapel Roan. I've also seen some other really interesting language used to talk to her in the comment section. One being, how many letters are there in Chapel Roan? 8.
Oh, see, now this is the thing. I don't know if it's me, if I'm not in the right spaces, if I don't participate in culture in this way, but things like mother is mothering, things like she has eaten. I don't even know the phrase. Like,
I don't think it's she. No one is saying she has eaten.
Are you well fed?
She's well fed.
Like,
maybe we should make that happen.
Yeah, I feel like I don't use language in that sort of, like, I'm one of these people that sometimes I meow, and I'm like, that's the kind of person I am. I don't know.
An autistic one.
Yeah. I don't know, like these like turns of phrases, like, have you ever heard me get one right? I had to listen and watch Bob's Burgers twice over to learn how to do puns. I'm really not. This is really important to me that you teach me.
I have heard you say the word slay.
I use slay as in like a broadsword has taken to flesh. Slay.
You use it in the medieval sense.
Like, yeah, slay queen.
Slain.
Yes. Like, well, slay is like, slain is too long. If you're on the battlefield and someone's just got like a no scope kill over there, you don't have the time. Yeah, well, good slain. It's, yeah, nice slay, Bob. Good one. Get the 9 o'clock, slay again.
Well, then this is the perfect 2 people to chat through this because you don't understand how it's used, and I think I have a healthy critique of these languages use. And for reasons that I'm going to go through, but it's certainly language that I don't really feel is mine to use. So
yeah, I don't either.
yeah, and I think there's a good reason for that. But at the same time, I think I want to talk to you about and what I want to unpack in part 2 is this idea of gatekeeping and language and when it's helpful and when it's not helpful. So
juicy.
Yeah, that's where we're going. And we picked up, so, you know, I feel like we got ourselves up from, you know, the Ottoman Empire up until 1950 with the last episode, looking at the way that gay people speak in terms of what they say and how they speak. And now I want to pick up, get us, you know, into the 80s. And I realized that the first part was really focused on 1, English, people who speak English, and 2, the way in particular white gay men use language to self-identify. Of course, not restrictively, but predominantly. In this part, I want to say that this is really not about white gay men. And I think my goal, because I think when we're going to unpack these things, I was thinking and reflecting about what my goal with this story is, because I don't want to come out and say, you shouldn't use this language, because I don't know. But what I'm hoping is for maybe a wider understanding of this language and where it comes from, and maybe, you know, people can make their own decisions about what they want to comment underneath Chapel Roan's clips.
Yes.
So we go back to the 80s. It was a pretty hard time. I'm going to orient ourselves in New York, in particular the neighborhoods of Harlem and maybe the Bronx, and as well as, you know, some areas of Brooklyn, but I think Harlem is really like a good epicenter for it. We are, you know, in New York. These similar things were happening in other countries like France and, you know, Germany, sort of in a satellite sense, but it was the 80s. So we'd come out of the 70s in New York City, which was a period of liberation. We had gay liberation that kicked off in 1969. After Stonewall in New York. And this was a period where there was a lot of liberal thinking, but New York was decimated economically.
Yeah.
And there was like such a idea that the city had gone to the dogs.
The rats, actually.
The rats. And literally it had gone to the rats. When we talk about the term dumpster fire, we are often being metaphorical, but throughout the 70s, like late 70s in New York, there were literal dumpster fires. The city had no money, so people who did own buildings would just torch them for insurance money.
Yeah.
That was just kind of what happened. And there was this idea called white flight, which is a sense that because New York was this really, really gritty, unsafe or unsavory place, what you would have is the wealthy white people who were the holders of capital, the holders of like money. They went out to the suburbs, Connecticut and, you know, New Jersey and things like that, or they moved. So it really just meant that a lot of the economic structures in New York and the support systems went to crap. They just collapsed in on themselves. And there was a lot of people that were really just thinking, oh, you know, it's those hippies, the gays, the communists, all of those people were, you know, being held responsible for this decline. And
yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, you know, like we can all relate to that. Like this is not new information or ideas.
No, I do a whole graph on this situation.
You do. And so when we look at the way that people treated queer and trans people, it wasn't good at all.
No.
And particularly when those queer and trans people were not not white. So they would be either black or Latinx. But it was also interesting because at this point and throughout the 70s, there had been some, I guess, drag balls that had kind of found their community, but it was really like pageantry sort of style. In the kind of 60s and 70s, it was all about, I guess, passing, and there was a level of wealth, and it was really quite white.
So for those of like our listeners who don't know what drag balls are, can you just give a quick like one-liner of like what they are?
Yeah, essentially, so drag balls came out of what you might call masquerade balls. There were things called, these different balls that were held from about the 1920s and 30s in New York. And they were areas where there was a lot of spaces where there was a lot of hedonism. So people would dress in drag, men would dress up as women. They would dance with each other. You might have like same-sex affairs throughout the evening, and it was all under this kind of masquerade hedonism kind of 1920s energy.
They just keep thinking of the masquerade ball from like season 2 of Gossip Girl, where like Chuck's like, I'm gonna put on this ball for you, what's Serena, so you love me. Like whatever, I don't know, that's basically the whole plot of Gossip Girl, right?
I've never seen Gossip Girl. You're going to derail this because I've never seen Gossip Girl.
You have seen Gossip Girl.
No, I haven't.
Are you for real?
No, I haven't.
It's a moment of silence, please.
Okay. Okay. So what happened at these balls? They were held mainly in Harlem. They were frequented by like Black communities, but also people from downtown. White people would go uptown for these balls as well.
Okay.
And, it was really like an epicenter for these like incredible nights of debauchery, really. They sort of continued, and there was this sort of pageant style element to them. So you'd get these drag queens that looked very, very glamorous, and they weren't necessarily transgender at all. They were often sort of cis gay men. There was like a spectacle, right? And that was the whole point of these drag balls.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if you were poor, if you were, I don't know, Latinx or Black, and maybe you were probably a sex worker at some point, just because that was an accessible way to make money, then you're not going to these balls. These are for people that aren't you. They required a lot of like money and funding to kind of participate in the pageant culture. And so if you didn't have that, then you would need to find another space. And so there were a new space that came up around the late 70s, and these were the house balls.
Ah, cool. Okay.
So
nice.
Pose, that's what we're talking about. The series Pose, I can recommend it if you have not seen it. It's a really wonderful scripted depiction of this period. If you want something more documentary, I do recommend Paris is Burning. And Paris is Burning is a documentary that first made me become interested in queer history. I watched it when I was 17.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen it. I think my sister actually got me to watch it 2018 maybe.
Yep.
19, yeah.
It's incredible, so I can recommend that. But at these balls, this was a space where Black gay men, Latinx gay men, and trans women would be able to compete in different categories through styles, which you might have heard of. This one, voguing.
Yes.
Made popular by Madonna, and a whole lot of other categories as well. And so at these balls, this was a place where it didn't matter who you were in terms of how much money you came from or what you did to kind of get your money, that you could come and find community and thrive.
That's really cool.
And it was cool because this is something that was built from people that had literally nothing. And the effort that they put in to this community was incredible. Costuming, the dance, these balls were amazing and so different from the kind of manicured pageant style balls that were happening, downtown. And at these balls, you would compete as a house. And a house was, you know what a house is. You can explain us.
Well, a ball is like made of, it's like, I don't want to say chosen family, but like it is kind of, it's not, is it?
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. So a house was really a chosen family that, came up for safety. So often at this time, sadly, if you came out as, gay or trans, you might get kicked out of home. So you'd become homeless from a very young age, and you would go to find community, people like you. And often that would congregate in the context of New York around Christopher Street Piers, which we did go to last year.
Oh, we did. Does that overlook Jersey?
Yeah.
I just remember sitting there being like, that's Jersey.
Yep.
For like 20 minutes.
Yeah. So the Christopher Street Piers was one place where people would go and congregate. And that is where people would also later through the 80s and 90s actually live there.
Yeah.
Sylvia Rivera lived there for some time. What they did there was you'd have older trans women who would often take in younger, I guess, people that had just become homeless, and they would teach them everything. So how to make money from sex work, which is sort of, in a sense, unfortunate and quite sad in that was the only option. But I also want to, I guess, balance that with the idea that it was also empowering for a lot of trans women because you can use your body for income in a way that's on your terms. So while some of these people that were doing it were very young, too young and exploited by the Johns or their clients, then other people found it quite liberating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is sort of what would happen, and you'd get these trans women who were older. And when we say older, I probably mean like 30.
Yeah. Like not actually older, but just like older by
28.
like literal age. Not queer time age. All right, Rita?
Yeah, all right,
From
Rita.
Sky News. But
yeah, so you had these people that had more experience, and they would take in these young strays, I guess you could call them, and often provide for them.
Wow.
So they would use the money that they earned to, provide food and shelter and, pay electricity bills, all of those types of things, and cook for them and really create something that was akin to the family experience that most of these people were kicked out of.
Oh, that's really nice.
It was really, really beautiful and important. And so what they would do is they would live in these houses, and they would basically live for these bulls. So these houses would compete against each other, and the houses would be named after the house mother.
Yeah.
So House of Libasia was named after Crystal Libasia. There was the House of Extravaganza. All of these different houses had these amazing names, and all of the people that lived within them, they would, rehearse all week to, take out gold at these balls.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so at these spaces, there was a lot of language that came out, right? And I'm talking about language that we hear a lot but might not know where it came from. So for example, Yas Queen is something that came from ball culture because people would be crowned queen of the ball.
Wow. And then you'd be shouting, Yas Queen, like, you won, bitch. Like,
yeah, totally. People would say, I don't know if you might see some people, you could actually see people yelling Yas Queen and Paris is burning, but people might say like, no, and shake their hand, which is another thing, which basically means how dare you have the audacity to be so amazing. A lot of like negative to the positive.
Okay. So it's like backhanded kind of compliments almost.
Kind of. There's this kind of camp irony or sarcasm.
Yeah.
There was another one. So calling someone real, or you're the realist, or that's real of you, or I need to be real right now, is something that we still say today. So can I be real with you for a minute?
Yeah.
That comes from a particular category at these balls, which was the category of realness.
Okay.
And basically what that meant was trans women competing to pass.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
So they would sort of walk, and if you were competing in realness, you would be, I don't know, maybe you're going to the bank. And so you'll see these videos of contestants walking in realness categories, and they might be kind of going to the bank, they might be going shopping, and the idea is can you pass as a woman the most successfully?
Okay, interesting. Okay.
And so there is like poignancy to it, because this was kind of ranking or holding trans women, or trans women holding each other up to cis ideals of beauty. But then at the same time, it was the 80s. So they didn't have any idea of any of this.
I've got a new category to enter in.
What is it?
Workshopping the name still, but it's category of CEO. All right. And what it would be is like, you got to pass as a CEO. You got to pass as someone with authority. You know how I'd win?
How?
Hard hat and a clipboard. No one's going to say no to me.
Yeah, I think that we could add some categories.
Yeah.
For you. I don't know how, I would not win in that category, but I would. No, I wouldn't.
No?
I feel like maybe I could enter dark academia wannabe category. But anyway, I think what's interesting is, so when you say, can I be real with you, we're saying you're actually harking back to trans women competing to pass as cis women going about their daily life.
Wow.
And then voguing is obviously a dance category, so we know about voguing thanks to Madonna. And there were a range of others, like so serving face, which was all again about how you looked and how you posed.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came from the idea of, voguing came from Vogue magazine, this idea of trans women, I guess, performing the most elite or aspirational version of womanhood that they could. And so that's where we get so many of our favorite sayings now. And I think RuPaul has popularized like quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
I've never watched RuPaul.
You mean watched him literally?
No, I've never watched RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, I watched one season with Ginger Minj in it. I just remember it because of that name. And it was like fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
I don't like, I mean, it's fine. I think it's not a show that I really lean into.
I feel like my biggest secret is that I don't really get drag.
I think you get drag, but I don't think it's like, you never say to me, let's go to a drag show.
To me, it's not. I feel like a lot of people go to drag, because it's kind of funny or it's still a bit of a spectacle of quote unquote a man dressing in women's attire. And while I know that drag culture is so much more than that, like it is.
Yeah.
I still have found it hard to kind of enter, I don't know, drag and find it very funny. Like I don't find it unfunny and I don't find it anything wrong with it. But
Yeah.
I'm just like, when I see them in an outfit or a dress, I'm like, that's a nice dress.
Okay. Well, maybe. So I've got 2 points. To your point right now, I'm like, maybe, how, again, we're talking about Chapel Roan, but you know how she had a drag queen as an opener for a concert and they said to her, and I'm like mincing the whole experience, but like they said to her, oh, like you're a drag queen, like you're a drag artist. And that kind of changed her way of like looking at her performance and looking at her identity. And I think maybe that's just how we sort of like view drag performance, costuming and whatnot, in that like if they rolled around, like if a drag queen in a full getup rolled around to my like Sunday lunch, I'd be like, I love your outfit. Like it's not really.
It is, yeah. And the performance, like I do want to say, because so many of my favorite queer artists have taken inspiration from drag. So like Christine and the Queens, the Queens comes from drag queens. I love King Princess. And again, Cheap Queen was one of the first albums. And then there's Chapel Roan. So the idea of drag as performance, I absolutely like love and can get into, I guess. But I see it separately as somebody dressing in drag, which I'm like, great. But I wouldn't go see to me, it would be like, do you want to come and see me wear a dress? And I'm like, you could wear it to my house.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like when I think of drag culture or where drag performances are, they're in clubs, they're in performance venues, loud, screaming, music, flashing lights. I'm sent over the edge just thinking about going to something like this. Like, I'm like
more sensory friendly drag culture.
But like even then, I don't know. Like
maybe you should go to drag story time.
Maybe that's where I need to go. Maybe I just need to sit in a beanbag and like just like take it in like that way. I don't know. But that's the thing. Okay, all right. This is the thing though. Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance, one of my favorite bands of all time. He wore an outfit which some would consider drag. It was a freaking like office secretary sort of like skirt, stockings, little heels, like block heels. And he didn't really have makeup on. Like he didn't have drag makeup on. In my opinion, the read that I got from him was like that was a very serious outfit for him to be wearing. But it was at his concert. It was a musical performance. Could one consider that a drag show?
Yeah.
Probably conceptually, the answer would be yes. So in that sense, I would go to that every day of the week. But like what we know traditionally as drag, it's not really my vibe. I love the artistry that goes into that and I really respect it and I really like I get a lot of like inspiration, like you said, from it. But I'm just not going to go to a drag brunch. I'm sorry. Like
I think yeah, we are on the same page. And I do want to split it out from what I would call political drag. So political drag was the idea of being subversive through drag, not as an art form on its own, but to critique, I guess, cis normativity. And that's where you get Marsha P. Johnson and a couple of those, they called themselves street queens, and they would perform as drag, but it was no one was trying to pass. Marsha would put her hair in rollers, but instead of rollers, she'd use beer cans. So there was an element of kind of, politics or critique versus what that pageantry style was, which was who's the most beautiful. And so, obviously there's a big spectrum of drag, but where I want to pick up now is on the term mother. So
finally answering this question.
When we talk about mother, what we are referring to is these house mothers. So these women, usually trans women, sometimes gay men. So there was Willy Ninja, House of Ninja, but these house mothers were caretakers of queer and trans people. And so when you say it's giving mother, one, you are harking back to the language used by, Black and brown, trans and gay youth. And you're talking about someone who you respect and is the leader of your household. And that person, can inspire you, care for you, and discipline you. As you see, and I think Pose is a really good example of that, where you will see, these house mothers demanding order. They might have rules against drugs, things like that. And you can get thrown out of your house. And I think that is why the term mother, I tend not to use, I don't have a reason to use it, but I think it's a really meaningful term that a lot of people bestow upon people that they're not related to, but are their chosen family and that look after them deeply. And I really want that word to remain really special for those people that want to use it in that way.
Yeah, you're right. Because if it turns into like a turn of phrase rather than like a meaningful title, it will eventually lose its meaning.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Chapel Roan isn't deserving of it. I think that she is a leader and an inspiration to so many people. But when I see people just use mother as mothering or mother, it's giving mother about, I don't know, really anyone. the person that took their order at the cafe, or people that have no connection to the culture that it came from, I do feel a bit weird.
Well, it is, because it's like I get a little bit worried in that it's like, oh my God, are we kind of losing something? Like you said, is it losing meaning? Is it like taking away from those sort of like established dynamics in a way? What word would replace it? Like, because sometimes like when you think about it, like when I think of the use of language, it's like sometimes the use of language informs the action.
Yep.
And so when a word is taken out of its original context and then changed, it's like sometimes that original context ceases to exist, full stop, or as we know it. And so it is interesting, and this is something only time will tell. It will be interesting to see like how it changes, because like, I don't know, because I feel like this is something you choose to like engage with. So it's like, I have really close friends who are trans. I don't particularly call them like siblings, but I do know a lot of like trans people who call their trans friends their siblings or their sibs or whatever. And that's really meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And I wonder like if like everyone started calling everyone siblings, would it still mean that much to the people that use it that way?
And I think as well, there is part of me that's errs towards, optimism on this. And I would hope that like, maybe there's something, but that by calling different people mother that aren't biologically the people that gave birth to you, maybe that's normalizing chosen family and different relationship structures. And that's like my optimistic hope. But what I wouldn't want to see is, you have people, saying mother is mothering, but then not supporting queer adoption or, fertility services for queer people and things like that. Or maybe they're like looking at, also engaging with, I don't know, rhetoric that says, children need a mom and a dad. That's when I would be like really uncomfortable by it. And of course, when I'm going through my comment section, I can't tell what all of these people think about all these different things.
No.
But it is something that does come to mind. And I think the other one is, the term slay. I think there's this funny thing where Gypsy Rose recently came out and said that she didn't know what the term slay or mother meant. Obviously, she's been in prison.
Yeah.
And then it gets thrown upon her a lot because, I feel like the queer community has kind of put like Gypsy Rose on a pedestal for some reason that I don't quite understand. But maybe it is because she actually slayed her mother.
Oh my God.
Right? Like I think that's
What the fuck?
I don't know.
Wait, are you saying like people want her to use the word slay because she slayed her mother, or?
No, I think the idea is that the gay community has adopted her as their patron saint for some bizarre memeified reason. And then people are saying, when she came out and said, I don't understand what slay or mother is. And I can only presume that is because so many people have referred to her as slaying her mother.
No, I think they just like, I think slay, people will be like slay queen. Like,
yeah, that's why I think, because I've seen these memes of people being like, Gypsy Rose is a queen. She's the only one of us that actually did slay her mother.
Where are you?
When you say slay,
yeah.
mama, slay.
Okay. See, now I'm a Gypsy Rose, man. I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I'm not in deep with Gypsy Rose, unfortunately.
I wouldn't dip more than like a fingertip in that pond. But what I want to move to now is the word cunt.
Okay.
What do you think of the word cunt?
I remember the first time I ever said cunt out loud, and it was a very solidifying moment for me. I started work when I was 15. I came home from work and my mom was like, how was your day? And I was really upset about something. And I was like, he's a cunt. And like my mom, because I come from a family, like we don't care about swearing. Like we just swear like if and when we feel like it, if the sentence requires it, it's not really a deal. But we never said the C word. And I said it and I could just tell that she kind of wanted to be taken aback, but then she kind of just realized who was actually talking. That was me. And she was like, I actually can't tell Rudy that that's a bad word because they used it correctly. This man is a cunt. And so, yeah, I have a really fond memory of that because I feel like it actually gave me a lot of like autonomy and agency with the way I was able to describe people and how I was feeling. But that's it being used as like a derogatory term. I have never used it in the term like in gay language, in gay speak.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, the term as it is used to refer to anatomy. Yeah, totally. I would use that. Like,
see, to me, it's like so removed from an anatomical like genesis, like of the word. I don't think of a vagina at all. You know what I think of when I think of the word cunt?
What?
A rock. I swear to you. It's a mangled.
Have you been living under a cunt for all these years?
I think of like the perfect rock that you would throw at someone. That's what I think of when I think of the word cunt.
Interesting.
Like it's this kind of gnarly, you know that Pokemon? I don't know its name. The rock one. I think of that, but like the perfect palm size, spherical. Like cunt to me is almost like the sound that rock makes when it hits something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I guess I've spent more time in like, I guess lesbian culture. And so the word cunt is used a lot there. And I think that there are some lesbian second generation, like, second wave feminists that think it's like a horrible word.
Sure.
But I'm really on the reclaimed side of it because I think it's quite a cool word if we choose to use it, where, to describe anatomy in that way. But what's interesting though is like when people say it's serving cunt, right? And I want to explain this now because people will say, oh, that's so cunty.
Is it got a good pH level or what?
Yeah.
Well, what are you talking about?
It's very closely related to another term that was used in this ball culture in the 80s and 90s, which was the word fish.
Oh my God. Are you for real?
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, if you are uninitiated, if you've been living under a cunt for the last... If you've been living under a cunt, the word fish is often a word that is used to describe the smell of a vagina or vulva and, in a sort of derogatory term, if it does smell like fish, that might indicate a problem that you should go and see a specialist about. But culturally, it's a term used to describe that smell.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, right? And I feel like there's probably a lot of like patriarchal stuff that has led to that and this idea that, female genitalia smells like fish.
Yeah. The only thing I'm sniffing right now is misogyny.
So this idea of serving cunt, what we are doing is within this like lingo or this language coming out of the 80s in Black and Latinx gay and trans communities is this idea that you would compliment someone by telling them that something about them or they were fish, which suggesting like you are a very good representation of a woman, so much so that you smell like fish. Similarly, serving cunt could be used in the same way. So when we talk about, the word cunt was used by a lot of trans women because it was a word for female genitalia that wasn't necessarily tied closely to the genitalia, not as far removed as your rock Pokemon analogy, but the idea of that, like, you might not have a vagina, but you might have a cunt.
Okay.
Which could be referred to, any other hole that you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And that you could use as such.
Sure.
So the idea of like serving cunt again was like harking back to the idea of, yes, look at you or look at me being, I guess, sassy, amazing, like the best version of my womanly self. It's so glamorous that it's cunt. And so when we start saying, she's giving cunt and things like that we use in the queer scene as a compliment, that's kind of what we're harking back to.
Interesting. Do you still think it's like gendered now? Like, do you still think that when people say like, oh, you're serving cunt, like, do you think people still are like recognizing like a femininity?
I think so.
Okay. Well, now I've got to add something to my gender dysphoria list. All right. Okay.
I think so. I mean, I think there is something gendered. Like, I'm trying to imagine.
Like, it's hard. It is kind of like, it's like but that's the thing. It's like, I feel like you would only be like conjuring a sense of femininity if you personally had in mind that illustriousness, chicness, extravagance, maximalism, whatever, like whatever word you want to describe, like the adjective of the thing is feminine.
I think,
right?
Yeah, it's a ramped up version of femininity, because I'm trying to think, like, I could say that, if you were a butch queen or, for example, a butch lesbian, say you were wearing like a bit of a tradie get up and you had combat boots on, I could see that you could say, oh, you're serving cunt, which might mean the most version of yourself or a ramped up version of yourself, or I'm recognizing you and your extreme womanhood as the max level of that, or I'm complimenting your expression of womanhood. Okay. I think there's that, because I think when you look at who gets described as serving cunt, you might have like cunty shoes, in which case maybe they're quite high or they're quite...
Okay.
It's not like you're going to go down to your average like suburban high school, pull out a prim and proper dressed female teacher and say that they're serving cunt, unless you wanted to apply something about them that was maximal, the most amazing,
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I feel like some people do use like that example of like, let's just say like your stereotypical like version of something like mid-level. It's not heightened and it's not like below average. It's just something in the middle. People will say, oh, that's serving cunt in like an ironic way.
Yeah, it's ironic.
This is why I don't get it. Like, use it seriously or use it funny. Like, stop fucking with me right now. Like,
well, I think that's the thing, because it's like the way that the internet kind of goes and iterates at such a rapid pace.
Yeah.
Now, if I walk in and I say cherry tomatoes is serving cunt, that would make sense, because I'm like, here's a really small thing, but I'm noticing the campness or extra thing about them, or I love them so much that they now serve cunt.
That's the thing.
And that somehow is funny. So it's like, again, we're using it in the 80s, we used it seriously.
Yeah.
Then we used it like, ironically. Now we're using the ironic form ironically. And
I just like, I can't get behind it. Like, just like, it's like, okay, cherry tomatoes make me think of Brussels sprouts. Now, I could say they're serving cunt because they're small cabbages.
Yeah, they are. They're little fucking tight little cabbages, like serving little cunt with a little bit of butter. Yes, queen.
That's not funny to me. I'm like, they're just good because they're small like cabbages. Can we just not point out that they're small cabbages? Like, why do we have to say they're serving cunt?
Like, because I think that's the thing on the internet. There's just an inappropriate.
Am I a boomer?
No, there's just like we just like to ramp things up for the most, I guess, kudos. You gotta, when there's an echo chamber, everybody competes to shout the loudest in the room. So who can push the meme even further? And I think what we're talking about now is because once you get into kind of serving cunt, you get into all this bizarre kind of meme language around it, like slay the cuntocracy. I had a couple here, which is like just ridiculous. But some different people saying things like she crashed a high-speed mother train into Cunt Central Station. All right, let's go one more. Wait, she low-key wiretapped the Cuntocratic Party's slay quarters at the Mothergate Hotel. Cool. Like, how can we add in more?
Like, I don't know. Where's the ceiling?
She voted cunt at the mother booth on Erection Day.
Like, see, this is a thing. Okay. It's just, I don't know. It's like, it's the use of language in that way. I don't find it particularly funny. Unless it's like in a super like, see, I would take like that and then I would apply it to like something very banal, like a mother with 2.5 kids in the 1960s going and voting for the first time. Like that, using it in that way, that's funny because I'm like, there is a serious irony. It's not just like some random that you saw at like a polling booth and that you decided to apply it.
Again, now you're operating a level up in the ironic level of that, because one thing so for example, Margot Robbie at the 2024 Golden Globes, I guess, attracted this tweet. OMG, she used a Slaper rifle to shoot the mother bullet into the head of John F. Cunty just because she was wearing a pink dress. Now that's funny because it's ramped up. Now apply that to something banal and it's funnier. So
yeah,
how does this apply to a strict high school principal or elderly person or person eating cereal?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like it's funny. I can understand how it's funny, but like I just, am I a boomer? I just don't find it funny.
I think what it is though is if we look back at a linguistic sense, the comedy is in the gap between the source material and the extreme language applied to it.
Yeah.
And so it's just a competition to widen that gap.
Yeah.
So once we've got to Slaper rifle to shoot the mother bullet into the head of John F. Cunty and we're talking about Margot Robbie, all right, well, I can't go any higher than whatever garble was in that tweet. So now I need to make the source material more removed.
Yeah.
So it's not Margot Robbie looking amazing in a dress. It's my Uber Eats driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like my high school English teacher. It is the receptionist at the tax office.
Yeah.
It's really about kind of getting that gap as wide as possible. And I think what we're picking up on here is that, again, this is a meme and memes follow linguistic forms.
Yeah.
And if we go back to part 1, which is where I want to land with this full circle, parlez-vous gay story, is this idea that if I go in now and I use the terms slay or cunt or mother, then again, I am using a shibboleth to say that this is the cultural group that I'm a member of. You might guess that, of course, I like Chapel Ronan. Of course, I think this person's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
You're not instantly getting from me that I'm the kind of person that likes watching like the V8 supercars and voting for Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, because we often speak about this, and I know from my personal perspective, like I often say like I don't feel very queer.
Yep.
And you're like, no, that's because like you're a circle, Rudy. And I kind of get that. But like maybe in part it's because like, number one, I don't really understand, like I don't really partake in the humor of this language. I don't use it. I'm not around people who use it. And it is like, I'm always talking about forms of communication. And it's such a lot. Language is like one of the biggest forms of communication, written or verbal. And because I'm not partaking in it, I don't even see it really online because of like the spheres and algorithms that I'm part of. It's like part of me does feel like maybe this is one of the reasons why I don't really feel engaged with a particular like part of queer culture. And part of it is like I said, like I do have the choice. Like we all have the choice to partake in it, but I actually don't want to. Number one, it doesn't really feel very natural to me. But number two, like, I don't know. It doesn't give me the ick, but I often do feel like the use of these words are in a way sexual or sexualizing of something.
They most definitely are, because they come back to a queer and trans experience, in particular a community in the, late 70s, 80s, very early 90s, that was defined by having sex in a quote unquote deviant way, identifying differently than how they quote unquote should have based on their genitals. And at this time were seen as highly sexualized because in the 80s, it was in the midst of the HIV AIDS crisis, which further kind of stigmatized gay men and trans women and bi men because of the idea that this disease was rampant as a result of the way they were having sex. So again, like I don't think you can really desexualize so much of queer language as a result of, you know, this group of because we're talking about a group of people that was seen as sexually deviant for like centuries.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I just don't relate to like and feeling sexual or sexualizing things like is like natural and fine, but it's like I just don't relate to it because I don't have those experiences. Or like even looking at something and being like, oh my God, you're so attractive. Like I'm going to compliment you based on your like physical attractiveness. I don't think to do that. Like I think to go like, oh, that's a really lovely color of yellow, Hannah, you're wearing. It really brings out the rosy, like cool tones of your face. Like that's where I go. I don't really go like in this sort of like direction with my language or my thought process.
Well,
I find it's
love
really
that.
interesting.
It's refreshing. I think it's refreshing. And I also think while what you're just seeing is patterns and this is like at the end of the day, the way that people think that they're being original, I guess, the way that they're building on this, but they're not. They're just taking a linguistic pattern and swapping words out. Like the meme has a form.
I love
this language has a form. So for you, you're probably like, it's just patterns. It's not funny to you because you don't find it funny, but you can just acknowledge that people are using it as a way of.
They're doing something with it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And that's fine. It's just, I don't know. Especially when it's like said en masse, like in comment sections of TikToks, like number one, I kind of get bored. I'm like, give me some like original content. But then like number two, I'm like, what are you even saying? Are you just saying something for the sake of it? Like,
I think so. And I think, you know, I try and like have an empathetic hat on sometimes on social media just because every time we get absolutely torn down, I'm not talking about the alt-right, but like anyone that doesn't like something that we've said or the way that we've said it, you know, they do take a very sort of, I guess, negative view or like hard negative view without maybe looking at any context or even really who the hell we are. And so they're not leading with kind of that
critical thinking.
Or the idea of giving people the benefit of the doubt. So I always try and think like, okay, so I always try and imagine when I get sick of it too, but I imagine someone that has just come out and they're just experimenting with their language for the first time and they get to be in on a great big joke. And I think that
that's so fun.
That sense of belonging and, you know, being part of a community, which goes back to the whole point of what we're talking about is this identifying with a group through language. That's amazing. And so if people can go out and say, yes, mother slay and feel like they're contributing to a culture that they're newly part of, then I think that that's a positive thing. And I'm really not into like, I don't want to come in and like school these people or, language police. But then there is part of me that's like, I better not see literally any of these people not standing against, I was about to do double negatives. I do not want to see any of these people saying anything against trans people, against sex workers, against people of color, against the intersection of all of those things in order to use these words. And I am not black or brown or trans or a sex worker. So I would roll over if there was somebody else that had a different opinion that was of these experiences. But I personally am cautious about using this language because, again, there's other language that we can use. And if I did use it, I would want to make sure that it was within its intended context with like knowing who developed it. Plus, I can just speak in Polari for that.
Yeah, you're so right. Like I probably sound super negative. I'm not trying to be negative.
I think that there's like, it's not about negativity. I think that there's something that's doing a lot for a lot of people. And there's also a problem with how it's being co-opted by different people and how that language is also being forced on other people within our community. So I guess like this idea of this hypersexualized, like cunt-focused language, it probably is like one, too focused on anatomy and genitalia, and it's too sexualized. And, you know, for people that are, you know, non-binary or trans or just have like any dysphoria related to their anatomy, probably don't want to be using this language to keep it front of mind.
Yeah.
And then secondly, if you're, you know, ace, well, it's not going to make much sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's all interpretation too. Like, you know, thank you so much, Hannah. That was a really good two-parter, and our first one too. And I'm glad it was language. I think that was a good start to our occasional two-parters. I learned a lot. I feel like I knew the top line kind of stuff, but yeah, I really learned a lot there. So thank you so much for sharing.
You are so welcome. Thanks for listening to me
say cunt so much.
So many times.
Yeah.
It was therapeutic for me, and I'm sorry if there were any small children that you were trying to keep away from curse words in earshot of this episode. But thank you so much if you did like it. Please give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow and subscribe. And if you feel so inclined to find out some more, you can find us at Rainbow History Class on social media and also on Patreon and Discord.
You nailed it. You did it all in one.
Amazing, amazing. And then we will see you next time. But until then, I want to leave you with my favorite saying. Not everything is gay, but there's slay in every cunting mother little cuntalicious thing. No, I can't.
No.